Welcome back, everyone, to the Risk Intel podcast, powered by SRA, where we share risk intelligence from experts across the banking industry. I'm your host, Ed Vincent, Executive Vice President at SRA. Hello, welcome to the Risk Intel podcast. I'm Ed Vincent. With me today is Strategic Risk Associates CEO and co-founder Michael Glotz.
Hey, it's great to be here again, Ed.
Thank you, Michael, for joining us. We look forward to your perspective on today's topic, which is the Board Risk Committee Charter. A couple of questions that we'll dig into today. Who authors the charter? Does the charter live forever? Or is it periodically reviewed? What are the key elements of a robust risk committee charter? And then what are the best practices should risk committees take into consideration on this topic? So, Michael, let's start with this first question of who authors that risk committee charter at the start?
Yeah, a lot of times there's one of three people involved in the charter. The chairman of the risk committee generally has that responsibility. If you have a chief counsel, that's a good place to go for some advice. And a chief risk officer, in a lot of cases, has the knowledge from past experience of what's in the charter. But I would say it's interesting when we ask for risk committee charters as we're doing board assessments. I would say in more than half the cases, there isn't a charter to be found. So whoever puts it together, and it can only be 1 to 2 pages, put one together.
Right. So step one is figure out if it exists or if it walked out the door when someone left the building, and if it's not there, then get after it and get one in place. All right. So let's assume that there is a charter in place, and we'll come back to what composes a strong risk committee charter in a second. But once that is created, does that charter live forever? Is it locked down and really this is going to live through for the duration of the bank, or does it evolve over time?
Yeah, it does. The charter does live forever, but usually the best practice there, Ed, is an annual review to make sure nothing else needs to change. And in most cases, from year to year, it doesn't change. But having that annual review of the charter and approval of the charter is the best practice.
That's good governance.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, so let's go and go into what comprises a risk committee charter. What are the key elements that go into that committee charter?
Well, the substance of the risk committee charter is really what the responsibilities of the committee are. So you're bringing clarity to the committee itself about what their role is, and you're bringing clarity to the full board. One of the responsibilities that the risk committee has is to report periodically to the full board. So the risk committee of a board the committee's role and responsibility is to inform the full board and to really take a deeper dive in risk. The other elements are things that the board should be reviewing on a routine basis. We talked about some of those before. Is there a risk framework in place, in terms of what the technology, the process, the people should look like? What are loss events reporting? What are the top 10 risks of the organization, and are they being managed effectively? And was a risk appetite statement set? Or is risk appetite being managed, and is there a risk statement available? So those are some of the key things that are important from a review standpoint. But also there's an additional responsibility that the risk committee has, and that's many times to oversee the chief risk officer. For large banks, the chief risk officer reports directly to the risk committee, which they have responsibility for evaluating the performance of the risk committee and evaluating the budget and resources of the risk committee. And in other instances, they're going to be evaluating the performance of the committee itself. So an annual self-assessment of risk committee effectiveness is important. So you heard three elements there, Ed, to summarize. You heard kind of the role of the committee. You heard, does the organization have the right chief risk officer and staff? And you heard as well, hey, based on a self-evaluation, is the risk committee effective in its role? Maybe once a year or every other year, have somebody help you organize that risk committee evaluation.
Sounds like there, Michael, that really this is the roadmap for how that committee should operate, and that if a regulator comes in, that they want to see that there's that this type of artifact in place to ensure that there is clear purpose and good governance around how this risk committee operates.
That's right.
Any other best practices that we've missed here in terms of authoring that charter and maintaining that charter?
One of the efficiency best practices I can offer is you don't have to reinvent the wheel for the risk committee, the board. If you have a risk committee of management, the agenda should be relatively the same. Maybe you're going down a little bit deeper because typically an executive risk committee meets 8 to 10 times a year versus a board risk committee maybe 6 to 8 times a year. But you're going through it a little bit more detail. Have the same agenda and content, and then you're able to summarize it a bit for the board. And it also allows you to prepare your management team for that board risk committee. So don't reinvent the wheel and have a separate agenda for the board risk committee and management risk committee. There may be a few items that that are different in terms of approval process, but other than that, be efficient. Aggregate once, present twice.
Terrific. Lots of powerful insights there around the risk committee and the risk committee charter. The importance of having that, one, in existence, two, reviewed on a periodic annual basis, three, having it include key elements such as understanding the reporting periodically to the board and the materials that be included in that, the oversight of the CRO office, and then the self-assessments of the committee itself. And then, Michael, I think that final point there of leaning into the efficiency aspect of this and preparing once and using twice there with that executive risk committee and the board risk committee is a great concept as well. Thank you for sharing these risk committee charter best practices.
Thank you, Ed.